Welcome to Quarantine Convos, powered by SCSUtickets.com. I'm Kirsten Kroll, joined today by St. Cloud State Athletic Director Heather Weems. Heather, thank you so much for being on with me today, and I can imagine how difficult and crazy things have been working in athletics, but what does a day in the life working in collegiate athletics look like these days?
I think the answer is I'm not quite sure. It's just crazy, but I would just say that I am imagining that when the quarantine convos started, we didn't know that we would necessarily continue to be having them. It's all of this is pretty unprecedented. We're all looking for the manual to pull down that tells us how to figure this out, and it doesn't exist. So lots of conversations. I think the biggest challenge simply is that every day looks a little bit different. And unfortunately, we don't get to, usually we unearth more questions than we do answers. So lots of circular conversations, a lot of scenario planning with less concrete decision-making than we're probably accustomed to in our world.
Yeah, and you touched on how all of us have kind of been feeling or thinking, how we're all just trying to figure this out, and there's more questions than answers. But one question a lot of people have had as fall sports are coming closer, what's the fall sports season looking like as of right now? I know it's changing every single day, but in the best way you can answer it, how would you?
As of today, we're having fall sports. I think that today alone, I was on conference calls with the NSIC, the WCHA, and the NCHC, just talking about planning and what sorts of things do we need to be having conversations about. I think last week, to be honest, was a bit of a sobering week with some announcements that were made. And for the longest time, what we have said is that, our best friend in all of this decision making was time. And right now, time is becoming shorter. And I'm not sure that the answers are getting any easier or more clear in a lot of ways, because as we've seen professional sports, as we've gear up and reopen, there's certainly been challenges. As we saw the curve begin to flatten a lot of places in the country, now it's seen a spike again, and so we're trying to predict where all this goes and what happens as a result of it. While still keeping in mind that our primary job is to ensure the safety and well-being of our students and those associated with our programs. And so as of right now, we are affirming that we're going forward. I'm not sure. There are many things that can still change.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the safety of the athletes and how that is first and foremost the biggest priority. What are some of the protocols that are looking to be put in place if and when fall sports do take place to not only keep the coaches and athletes safe, but if there were to be any sort of fans in attendance possibly, or what have the discussions been like from that end?
I think the part, we've made some progress in that we have student athletes back in the weight rooms and we have them doing individual or small group practices. And that's the place where I think we feel pretty confident that we can continue to manage. As we get into bringing entire teams back, running up entire operations, that's where things get a little bit more questionable. Especially given the continuing guidelines that we have from the Minnesota Department of Health and the CDC, and how many people can we have in groups and all of those sorts of things. So we've been able to mitigate it through this voluntary practice period. Even that said, we don't have all of our student athletes back by any stretch of the imagination. We've probably got 30 to 40 right now who are in town and taking advantage of voluntary workouts. And even that, the protocol is exhausting in some ways, and particularly for the athletic trainers and the strength and conditioning coach, to ensure that all of them, before they come into the building, we've got patterns of where they enter and where they exit so that we can manage a little bit, how we clean and disinfect and all that sort of thing. But they come in, they immediately do surveys, to look at symptoms. They wash their hands, they're masked when they come in. They do their workouts, and then, the strategy right now is to have them exit. We don't have access to locker rooms or to other spaces at this point, because again, we're just trying to see how we can manage the small part. as we bring more students back and as we reopen all of campus, all of a sudden, you know, obviously your mass of students increases quite a bit. And so, you know, it's baby steps right now. As we get into the fall and assuming travel, you know, a lot of what we're looking at is how do we work with our students to keep them in as small of pods as possible. Much like if you think a little bit about the stay-at-home orders that came early on in all of this, you know, what they encouraged us to do was really operate as family units. So how do we try and isolate is the best way to say, okay, volleyball team, we're going to get to a point where we're comfortable that you're all interacting, but try and minimize your interaction with other people. And when you do interact with them in classes, going out to the grocery store, you know, wherever you're at on campus, wear a mask. Because again, if I'm taking care of my safety and you're taking care of your safety, then that enhances the safety of both of us. And I think universal masking is going to become really important to bringing sports back. And we've seen that in Europe and other places that have gotten some of their operations moving back is there really is this commitment to masking at a pretty high level. So, you know, that's a part of it. Travel obviously might look a little bit different. We've already seen with the change in scheduling that we've become much more regionalized in the NSIC sports. In a lot of places, you know, we're pretty much a conference only schedule, so we'll remain relatively regionalized. Even in the Hockeys, we are seeing a movement really toward being more regionalized. Some of that is because of travel orders, some of it is budget related, some of it is just being able to control, knowing, you know, your pod of competitors and what sort of standards and protocols they have in place. So we're seeing a lot more movement towards regionalized travel, which then as we get into the actual part of it is, you know, we're going to encourage as much, you know, bus travel and travel to and from with less hotels, less meals being had out, mostly because every single exposure is, again, exposure to what you don't know. So the more that we can control and we can, you know, isolate our teams into pods and having fewer contact with strangers or non-associated folks, not because we don't like them, not because we don't want to be part of the community. I mean, this is almost counterintuitive because all the time we're saying, oh, you're great ambassadors. We need you to be out there. We need you to be interacting with the community. We need you to be signing autographs. This is a year where we're going to be saying, nope, we're going to minimize your contact with everybody else because we want you to be able to play if we're in game situations. So everything requires a process at this point.
Absolutely. And another topic that has been a news story or of discussion this summer has been the groundbreaking of the new Strength and Conditioning Center in Hollenbeck Hall. What has the progression of the weight room been like, or how are things looking with that project?
You know, we are really excited. I continue to believe that it's a game changer for our programs at Hollenbeck Hall, which is, you know, predominantly our Division II programs. So they've taken out walls. The deconstruction has happened. They're just beginning to get started with the rebuilding pieces of it. And so we've had meetings, obviously, with contractors and the architects just to keep things moving, you know, conversations with graphic design to get kind of the framework of what it's going to look like. I will say there's a few different areas. So it's the enhancements are taking place in what has, since the 1980s, been the strength and conditioning area for Hollenbeck Hall. It is a facility that is about 5,000 square feet. We added, with the removal of a few offices that were connected to it, we removed a wall, so there'll be an additional cardio area, which will be in addition. Our Division II athletes haven't had a lot of access to cardio, so from a treadmill, elliptical bikes, rowing machines, that sort of thing, there'll be new equipment that they'll have access to. The old space, everything from new flooring to fresh coats of paint, ceiling fans in what was a very stuffy space. And then the last piece of it is a recruiting room, multi-purpose room that actually has a full glass wall that'll overlook onto the strength and conditioning center. So when you're in that room, you'll be able to see, you know, the laboratory of our students actually working out with a floor to ceiling glass wall. That's probably, my spaces are always great, probably about 20 feet long. So that'll be really impressive. new graphics, new lighting. It will really freshen it up. And then the last piece is the strength and conditioning room is actually just behind a wall that runs the entire length of the main gym that is just concrete. We're going to put in a few different banks of windows so that as fans and admission tours and students transition between classes, they can actually look down and see the workout space as well. So we think, we know the impact that the Strength and Conditioning Center, the Huskies Hockey Performance Center had for recruiting and just for training and development of our student athletes in the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center. We're pretty sure that this will have that same sort of impact for our fans, but more importantly for our student athletes and recruits as they see the investment in the programs.
We're also all very excited to see the finishing product of the new weight room. And Heather, as we finish up here, is there anything else you'd like to add to our conversation today?
I think what we've recognized over time, when we went into this in March, you'll remember how quickly it came about. And I think that we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. And I remember that, literally on Monday of the week of March 9th, 10th, 11th, whatever that was, on that Monday, we're just kind of keeping an eye on it. On Tuesday, we're saying, okay, we may have to make some adjustments, be ready. These are some things we might enact. On Wednesday, we made the call that probably all of these championships are going to be had without fans. And by Thursday, really the winter championships were all canceled with the spring to come shortly thereafter. The ramping up is the same sort of conversation, and what we've seen is that there's been another spike beyond that. And so I think patience and grace are two important words right now as we try and open. But I think the other part that we've recognized is how much sport and activity matters to us. I was at my high school son's, he's playing for a community team, and he had his first game actually just Sunday night. And it was so fun just to be back physically distanced in a space where, people are at least playing. And as we begin to see some of the sports come back, we really need that sort of interaction. I think that our psyches rely upon it. I think that at a time when so many things are divisive, we need to have those places where we all come together behind, in our case, the red and black and the Huskies. So it's critically important. That said, as we continue to look at health and safety, as we continue to look at what's going on, not just with our own population, but really the population of our communities in the country, we also have a responsibility to be responsible. And so, in some ways, those two things seem to be going head to head, because I think that, at the Division II level and the Division I level of hockey, what we know is that our student athletes benefit from this experience. Whether they go on to play at the professional level, it is almost just a complete separate conversation. We believe that our student athletes are better prepared for life because of athletics. We believe that their passion and their desire to play is important. We believe that the engagement that we create with campus, whether it's Husky Productions, whether it's cheer dance, whether it's fan engagement of, the dog pound, all of those things are important to our campus. And then certainly with all of our fans and supporters, this is something that they look forward to, whether it's volleyball games, hockey games, basketball games, softball, and baseball. These are things that they look forward to. So what we're trying to really do is balance, can we logistically pull this off safely and for all the right reasons, while ensuring that, we're committed to health and safety. And so it is, baby steps forward. It is a lot of unknowns. We're operating in more gray. I'm usually someone who deals well with gray, and, kind of takes things and can evaluate as we go. This is a little bit more than even I probably am comfortable with. But again, patience and grace are going to be important. Recognizing how important this is to our community and our student athletes, and just trying to balance all of those conflicting things is really what we're trying to do. And I would say right now, whether you're an education leader, a business leader, leadership is really hard right now. The decisions that we're being asked to make, I feel like I've been asked to be a public health expert which for the record, I did not go to school for. So trying to ingest and pull all of this information together and use advisors and use people, you know, in our safety department and our health center, and Julie Alexander in the training room, and the expertise of the Sports Science Institute at the NCAA. What we're trying to do is integrate all of that information to make the best decisions based upon the information that we have now. So kudos to all the leaders out there who are trying to make decisions. I know that the K through 12 educators are doing the same thing right now. And what I can attest is there is no perfect answer, but we really are, our hearts are in it for all the right reasons. You know, our minds are in it for all the right reasons. We're trying to use all the resources we have at our disposal to do what we think is right for our students, our campus, and our community.
Well, all of our fingers are crossed that we'll be able to see our Huskies back in action later this fall, and also hopefully eventually get back in those stands, as you had mentioned earlier. Heather, thank you so much for your time today and for all of the work that you're doing to try to make sure that we go about this safely and get back in action this fall.
Thank you.
And if you're not already, make sure to follow the St. Cloud State Huskies YouTube channel for more exclusive content. This is it for this time, but until the next, stay safe, Huskies.